Hi everyone, this is Kalyan Kumar and welcome once again to Chemistry Universe. This is going to be a very important video as far as optical isomers are concerned because this video deals with the optical isomers. This is part 6 of the isomerism series, and please make sure that you look into this video as many times as you want because this is very crucial. This is what builds the backbone of optical isomers and understanding how they behave and how they differ from each other. So let's get on with the show. This is part 6 and this is optical isomers. Now, configurational stereoisomers that have different value of specific rotation are called optical isomers. Now, in the last video, we did have a look at what is optical rotation. We found out that there are certain molecules which have certain properties that makes them optically active, rotate the plane polarized light. We even looked at various symmetry elements after that. So this is very important to understand that optical isomers are configurational isomers. They cannot be converted into one another. The ones that can be converted into one another by mere rotation of bonds, they are called conformational isomers, which will be the next one that we'll be dealing with. But configurational isomers are the ones whose configuration are fixed, are sealed. Just like we saw geometrical isomers, they are configurational isomers. But this type of configurational isomer that we're going to talk about, which we call as optical isomers, are a little different. They're different because they are first of all optically active, and secondly, both of them rotate the plane polarized light by the same amount, by the same degree, but in opposite directions. And obviously we are talking about optical isomers when they have the same concentration. So if I have optical isomer 1, optical isomer 2, both have the same concentration, and we will find that their rotation will be exactly opposite and have the same numerical value. So this is what optical isomers are all about. Optically active compounds are those that can rotate the plane polarized light. This we've already seen. Now, optically active isomers are a pair of stereoisomers which rotate the plane polarized light by the same angle but in opposite directions. They are obviously stereoisomers because structurally they are the same. Now, optically active isomers are also known as enantiomers. So either you call them as optically active isomers or you can call them as enantiomers. It means one and the same thing. All optically active compounds are chiral, and the converse is also true. So here I'm introducing a concept called chirality. Any optically active compound is said to be chiral, and any chiral molecule will also be optically active. So all optically active compounds are chiral, and the converse is also true. In chemistry, a molecule or ion is called chiral if it cannot be superimposed on its mirror image by any combination of rotation and translation. So what defines a molecule to be chiral? What is the basic thing? The basic thing is that if you have two molecules and they're said to be optically active, they're said to be chiral, let's say, then a molecule that is chiral, if you look at its mirror image, it will not superimpose on its mirror image. Let me give you an example. Now, if you look at this molecule, now this molecule has two whites, an orange and a green. Now, this molecule is not chiral because, and if I put a plane from here that cuts the orange and the green into two halves, then these two are whites anyway. You will have one half and the other half exactly same as each other. This is not chiral. Now, the way we can test this chirality is, of course, one is we can check for any symmetry element like a plane or a center or an alternate axis, or another way would be keep this object like this. Now think of its mirror image. Now keep this molecule like this. You can keep it in any way you want. and think of its mirror image. Its mirror image would look like this. See, I'm holding both of them by the orange atom. Let me hold them from the center if possible. Yeah. Now, do you notice that this object's mirror image is this one? If you keep a mirror here, you would see this object, right? Now try to superimpose them by any combination of rotations or translation. That means rotate them from any way. So I keep it like this. And this one I rotate like this. And when I try to keep it here, you will notice white is on white, green is on green, orange is on orange. Can you see that? Can you see they are exactly superimposable? So this is a molecule that is superimposable on its mirror image. But let me try giving you an example of a molecule that is not superimposable. Now this is a chiral molecule. And how do I know it's a chiral molecule? Because if I keep it here in front of its mirror image, can you see its mirror image now? This molecule is the mirror image of this one. Now try to superimpose them. If I rotate it like this, remember the white is at the back, okay? If I keep it like this and try to move this one, and if I try to superimpose, what happens is the green superimposes, the white, both of them have the white at the back, they superimpose, but can you see the orange and the purple don't superimpose? That is the problem. These two are mirror images, but they are not superimposable. These two molecules are chiral. This geometric property is called chirality. The terms are derived from the ancient Greek chair, meaning hand, which is the canonical example of an object with this property. Now to make this very clear, let's try and understand this hand. Okay, this is my left hand and this is my right hand. If I keep this in front of a mirror, I'm going to see this as a mirror image. My left hand and my right hand are mirror images of each other, assuming of course they're exactly the same. Now let's try and superimpose. Now don't think this is superimposition. No, this is not superimposition. This is not superimposition because when you superimpose, everything should superimpose. So I keep it like this and I keep it like this. Remember this part of the hand which is a little lighter in shade and this part of the hand which is a little darker in shade, they all must superimpose. So, but if I try to bring them to superimpose, you will find that they don't, because my thumb of this hand is here and this hand is here. They don't superimpose. This is handedness. One hand and the other hand, they don't superimpose. The reason I do not call this a superimpose is because they must be oriented in the same way. The lighter part of the hand and the lighter part of this hand, they also must be in the same direction. And here they don't superimpose. And that is called handedness. Chiral molecules are dissymmetric. They lack the alternate axis of symmetry SN, which includes the plane and the center of symmetry. Now, as we have already seen in the case of symmetry elements, we said that possessing an alternate axis of symmetry would make the molecule symmetrical. Now, alternate axis of symmetry includes in it the center of symmetry as well as the plane of symmetry. So if you can make out the alternate axis, which generally is not that easy to do, but if you can see a plane which is simple, if you can see a center of symmetry which is simple, you can clearly say the molecule is not dissymmetric. It is symmetric. Because remember, a symmetric molecule needs to have an alternate axis of symmetry. It could have a plane of symmetry, it could have a center of symmetry, but even having an alternate axis of symmetry is sufficient. Axis of symmetry is not necessary. But a dissymmetric molecule is the one in which you do not have any alternate axis of symmetry. And since center of symmetry and plane of symmetry are special cases of alternate axis of symmetry, not possessing alternate axis of symmetry is sufficient enough for us to say the molecule is dissymmetric. And all chiral molecules are dissymmetric. So the absence of plane of symmetry, the absence of center of symmetry, the absence of any other alternate axis of symmetry is sufficient for us to say the molecule is dissymmetric. and chiral molecules are disparate. Generally, a chiral molecule has at least one chiral center. Now, this is a very general thing. Most of the chiral molecules have at least a chiral center. Now, the reason I'm saying it generally is because you can have more than one chiral center and yet the molecule is chiral. That's fine. There are cases when you have more than one chiral center and the molecule is not chiral. And there are also cases where a molecule is chiral and does not have any chiral center. So why am I insisting on making this statement then? The reason I'm making this is because the molecules which do not have chiral centers and are chiral are very few, are very typical molecules. And you can look at them and say, all right, this one is that kind of a molecule which could be chiral without possessing a chiral center. So in general, all molecules that have optical activity that are chiral will definitely have at least a chiral center. A chiral center should be a carbon, silicon, or metal atom or ion which is attached to 4 or more atoms groups, all of which are different. A chiral center can also be a trivalent atom like nitrogen or phosphorus or sulfur in sulfoxides when they're attached to 3 different groups. But remember, if a molecule can interconvert into its non-superimposable mirror image, it is not considered to be having a chiral center, like the umbrella inversion in tertiary amines. So what I'm basically trying to say here is that a chiral center is a carbon, could be a nitrogen, could be a metal atom or ion, could be any atom for that matter, having 4 different groups. And one of these groups could be a lone pair, as long as it cannot interconvert by umbrella inversion. And if you remember, we did umbrella inversion when we did general organic chemistry. We talked about how umbrella inversion takes place in pyramidal molecules or ions, like carbon ions. So if an amine can undergo umbrella inversion, it will not be considered chiral, though technically it might have 4 different groups including a lone pair. But if it is an amine which is cyclic, which means it does not undergo umbrella inversion, then definitely that will be a chiral center. So the condition for having a chiral center is an atom having 4 different groups. A molecule with only one chiral center is chiral, that is optically active. So the moment you see a molecule having only one chiral center, you don't have to look at anything, you can directly say it is chiral. You don't have to look at anything. You don't have to search for any planar symmetry or check for all the symmetry elements. No. One chiral center and you're sure of that and you're correct. If it is having one chiral center, it will be chiral. A molecule that has even number of chiral centers may or may not be chiral. Again, as I said, having a chiral center does not necessarily imply it will be chiral. If it has only one, it is chiral. If it has more than one that is even numbered, then you cannot say whether it is chiral or not. It might be chiral, it might not be chiral. There are certain molecules that are chiral without having a chiral center. This is the one I was talking about. So a chiral center is neither a necessary nor a sufficient condition of chirality. However, the molecules that are chiral without chiral centers are very distinctive and can easily be distinguished. The test of chirality is the absence of any alternate axis of symmetry, which I've already mentioned, which can also be identified by the non-superimposability of a molecule in its mirror image. The molecules that rotate the plane polarized light in the clockwise direction are called dextrorotatory, and the enantiomer that rotates the plane polarized light anti-clockwise is called levorotatory. Now this is something again that you need to understand a little bit in detail. So let me try and show you something. Now look at these two molecules. Let me orient it in the same way as possible. Okay. You will notice they are not mirror images. Okay. As you can notice, if I hold it from the center, both contain a white, an orange, a green and a purple atom. The green is on top in both, the purple is at the back on both, but the orange and white, they are not facing each other in the mirror image. But if you check the superimposability, if I move it like this and I move it like this, can you see they are exactly superimposable? Orange on orange, white on white, green on green, and purple at the bottom. Can you see they are superimposable? These two molecules are the molecules of the same compound. They're basically same compound. Two molecules of the same compound because they're superimposable. So superimposability is the test to see whether two molecules are of the same type or not. On the other hand, if I'm going to look at this molecule, now you will notice they're exactly mirror images of each other, but they're not superimposable. The green and the purple will superimpose, the white and the orange won't. So what does that tell you? These two are enantiomers. And can you see how similar they are? They have the same 4 groups. The only thing is they are mirror images, non-superimposable. And they are just like our hand. They look exactly the same. They're different. And the difference is because of the chirality. They cannot superimpose. Several properties are different for the two enantiomers apart from optical rotation. And enantiomers differ in the reactions with their when they react with some chiral molecules. Proteins are made up of chiral amino acids. The enzymes in our body are chiral too. The enzymes react differently with both the enantiomers. Sometimes the reaction occurs only with one of them. It is like fitting a left shoe on the right foot. And I think this is a very, very valid example. In fact, let me go a step further and say, let us take a glove. And I'm talking about a glove which has different front part and back part. If you play cricket, if you know about a cricket glove, let's take a cricket glove. Now this glove will appear different here and appear different here. You cannot put the left glove on the right hand. Only the right glove will fit into the right hand. Whereas if you look at a pair of socks, you don't have a special sock for right and the left foot generally. If it is a socks which doesn't have a toe thing in that. So that is because socks is achiral. It is symmetrical. So that can fit into both feet. It doesn't matter. But a glove, on the other hand, is chiral also. So a chiral thing can recognize the other chiral one. The left glove will only fit in the left hand. The right glove will fit only in the right hand. You cannot interchange them if the front and the back part are different in the glove. Now, enantiomers can interact differently with our chiral taste buds. D amino acids all taste sweet, while the corresponding L isomer is often tasteless or bitter. Enantiomers also can smell different. The different smells of oranges and lemon are due to the enantiomers. Many beneficial medicines have enantiomers which have little or no pharmacological effect. In fact, in the case of one medicine, thalidomide, a drug to treat cancer, the apparently non-active enantiomer was found to damage unborn children when the drug was taken during pregnancy. Since separating enantiomers is often very expensive, most of the drugs are marketed as a mixture of isomers. So most of the antibiotics that we consume, they're all chiral. But when a drug is manufactured, you'll always get both the enantiomers occurring in the same mixture. And it is very, very expensive and very, very difficult to separate the enantiomer because most of the properties are same. Their melting point is same, their boiling point is same, their refractive index is same. But when they interact with chiral molecules, they interact differently. One may react, other may not, or both may react differently to produce different type of product. So it is very tough to separate the enantiomers. So if it is found that one enantiomer, the one which is acting, and the other one is the one which is non-active isomer. When I say non-active, I mean to say that is not required to be taken, and only one of them acts as an antibiotic. The non-active isomer sometimes may not affect you in any other way. So it doesn't matter, you can take a mixture. But sometimes it can damage you. It can give you a side effect. In that case, they need to be separated, and that is very expensive, which is why several antibiotics, certain typical ones, are very, very expensive, while others are not, only because their non-active form does not harm us, whereas the non-active form of the others harm us. Penicillin, an antibiotic, kills bacteria by breaking its cell wall, which contains D-alanine. But it has no effect on human cells, as we have L-alanine rather than the D isomer. And that is because the D and the L are the isomers, the optical isomers of each other. Enantiomers have several of their physical and chemical properties identical. Examples include density, refractive index, viscosity, boiling point, melting point, acidic and basic strength, and reaction with achiral compounds. Fractional distillation is a method of separating compounds of different boiling points, however close. Since enantiomers have the same boiling point, they cannot be separated by this method. Now, fractional distillation is something which can separate compounds even with very, very close boiling points. But since the enantiomers have exactly the same boiling point, you cannot separate the enantiomers using fractional distillation. However, enantiomers react at different rates or giving different products on reaction with other chiral molecules that are optically pure that I told you. Therefore, a mixture of enantiomers can be separated by reacting them with an optically pure compound and then separating the products from which the optically pure reactants can be regenerated. This process of separating enantiomers is called resolution. A very important concept, resolution. Resolution is basically the process by which enantiomers are separated. So if I have enantiomer A and enantiomer B, I treat them with an optically active compound C, a pure optically active compound C. Now A may react with C differently, B may react with C differently, they'll give you different compounds. The moment you get different compounds, their boiling points will be different, so fractional distillation can separate them. Then the product of A and C and the product of B and C, they are reacted in such a way that A and B are regenerated again. So that way a mixture of A and B can be separated, which I said is very cumbersome. A mixture of enantiomers of equal concentration would be optically inactive, as they would cancel each other's rotation. This is called a racemic mixture. As I said in the beginning, enantiomers are compounds having the same optical rotation value but in different directions. So if you take an equimolar mixture of both, the net rotation will be 0. And this mixture is called racemic mixture. The ability of a mixture in which the optical rotation of one molecule is cancelled by another is called external compensation. And it is not possible to predict which isomer would rotate the plane polarized light clockwise or anti-clockwise just by looking at a molecule. So generally it is not possible to look at a molecule and decide, okay, this is going to rotate clockwise and this is going to rotate anti-clockwise. There's no way of doing that. But there have been some methods that have been developed over a period of time, where in most of the cases one can, by making certain rules, decide which will rotate clockwise and which will rotate anti-clockwise the plane polarized light. That I'm going to deal in a separate video. So that is the end of this video of optical isomers. It's very essential that you watch this video as many times till it is very, very clear to you as to what these molecules are and how they differ from each other. So with that, we come to the end of this video. I hope your concept of optical isomers was strengthened by looking into this video. If you have any questions, any doubts, anything, we will have the question forum where you can post your questions and we will try and get back to you as early as we can. So with that, this is Kalyan Kumar signing off. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye and thank you for watching this.